Hello, I'm Sean from Fortmatic. So this workshop is share a bit more about Fortmatic and also, give some tips and inspirations for winning the prize. To recap the hackathon prize, we're giving 3 winning teams. The first place will get a grand prize of 2,500 Canadian dollars and 250 Canadian dollars for the runner-ups. Project will be evaluated by user experience, practicality, and originality. So yeah, before I start, I want to talk a little bit about my past work because it's quite relevant. So before founding Fortmatic, I actually worked at Docker for 2 years. And I worked really closely with the founder, the CTO at the time, to help manifest his incredible ideas into things that are very accessible to developers. And if you use Docker before, this little menu bar item, right? That's my project, and it's called Docker Desktop. And basically, it is the point of entry for Docker, and it is used by over 2 million monthly active developers, and which is around 10% of all developers worldwide. I was also the creators of Kitematic, the desktop GUI for Docker, which was acquired in 2015. We wouldn't be able to accomplish this without a great combination of strong tech and developer experience. So before Docker Desktop, Docker wasn't optimized for the desktop, right? For common operating systems like Mac and Windows, there's really high installation failure rate, which resulted in a lot of drop-offs. It was buggy, it's complicated, it had very sporadic behaviors because it integrated with a third-party tool called VirtualBox. And what we did eventually is we removed this dependency and made Docker feel like it's running natively on the desktop. It's invisible and staying out of the way of developers, right? This was done by working with the best kernel hackers in the world and leveraged the operating system's internal hypervisor and exposed them to the users. The dependency problem for Docker is strikingly similar to what we're experiencing today in the dApp ecosystem. With dApps having to rely on third parties, such as browser extensions or mobile wallets, in order to serve their users, with a really low, 22% conversion rate in the most optimistic case for users who are new to the space. Instead of a virtualization issue, the user experience problem in dApp ecosystem is actually a key management issue. So after auditing the de facto browser extension user experience, we've categorized the different steps into 4 categories. The familiar, right, Web 2 user experience with the lowest, which has the lowest rate of user drop-off. And also the unfamiliar Web 3 user experience, which may expose too much foreign concept in the user, which result in drop-off. Context switches, where users thrash between completely different user experiences, result in the most chance for drop-offs. And lastly, informative steps where user can drop off from feeling annoyed or feeling exposed to too much information at once. Essentially, what Fortmatic did for dApp with our SDK is to remove all the steps from the user experience where users have a chance for drop-off. And basically the idea is, don't make users feel like they're working on thin ice with all these warnings, have to be careful with everything. We have to make sure that users feel secure and supported. Therefore, create a UI that is familiar authentication experience to mainstream audiences like email, phone, two-factor, multi-factor login, so user won't be spooked by unfamiliar experiences. We also offer extensive white labeling service, so you can make Fortmatic look and feel like your application without diluting your brand and user experience and help build trust between your app. We'll also be shipping soon, in a week, the ability for users to make transactions on dApps with their credit card. No KYC needed for smaller amounts. In the future, we'll be adding things like Apple, Google Pay, and bank transfers. Underneath our UI is our delegated key management architecture. We actually just rolled this out on Monday, and we've been working on this since we launched in February. Basically, account recoverability is super critical to us because mainstream users will lose their device, their recovery kits, or forget their password for the encryption. The feeling of hopelessness from being locked out of their account is really, really bad for mainstream adoption. And to keep our architecture non-custodial, we make sure we never see the private key at any part of the flow. So private keys are generated locally on developer's client within the secure iframe sandbox, and then directly encrypted and decrypted with the cloud hardware security modules hosted on Amazon services. And we actually discovered this by accident, like searching on the internet, where this user was complaining that he got locked out of the Amazon's KMS, key management system. So we instantly thought, hey, why don't we remove our own access to it so that we can no longer access our own, use our own KMS for encryption and decryption, effectively locking ourselves out. And to hold ourselves accountable, we've gone through extensive SOC 2 audits to make sure that we have the correct security controls, which is a standard pioneered by industry leaders like Coinbase and Gemini. With a solution for key management, authentication and authorization, fiat on-ramp, dApps will be leveling the playing field with centralized incumbents, and we'll be ready to crush it when the market heats up again. Now for some ideas and tips for the bounty. I feel like one of the biggest and most effective improvements dApps can make is adopting a concept, UX principle called progressive disclosure. dApps should be easing users into more complex tasks by reducing the clutter and confusion and cognitive workload, usually by avoiding giving users too much decision, which causes decision paralysis, and also showing too much information at once. A really good example here, are games. If you play games like StarCraft before, they cleverly avoid overwhelming users with a tech tree, which gradually unlocks new units as you progress into each game. There's also a pretty cool equation called the Higgs law that illustrates the impact to reaction time based on the number of options provided by users. It takes a lot for users to understand new concepts by leveraging existing concepts or memes that users are already familiar with. It will help a lot with reducing cognitive workload. And here are some pretty good examples. So token sets does a good job on this. Inherently complex under the hood, but they've combined all of this complexity into simple and familiar actions of buying and selling tokens with one user interface that users are familiar with, like Wealthfront and Robinhood. And DeFi is on the verge of a Cambrian explosion. Your protocols like SET and UMA enables developers to build synthetic assets, right? Baskets of tokens that are auto-balanced or having tokens that are tied to the value of real-world assets, right? Now with also the proliferation of decentralized exchanges, it makes it much more accessible to publish these new assets worldwide through these decentralized exchanges. And also, great products are extensible, ever evolving to the user's need, and also without too much introducing too much complexity. We at Fortmatic have been really fascinated by smart contract wallets because their elegant extensibility and also the extra security for users who need it. Basically, Fortmatic never really intended to be a wallet. It's just a good way to start and get people using it. We've always wanted to build a robust and secure and compliant base level key management infrastructure for developers to use. We'd be really excited to see Fortmatic's key being used as a master recovery key for a smart contract wallet, let's say on Gnosis, with the option for users to add other keys to further improve the security. of their fund for custody and decentralizing trust. This would be really great for enterprise users and also users with much higher security preference. Yeah, and while you're at it, it would be really cool to somehow work 3-box identity into this, as is your identity that follows you around. Web3 technology also enables new types of organizations and business models. ICOs are just a glimpse of what's possible, right, in innovation in this space. And we've always been a fan of DAOs, ways to properly align incentives of network of people. There are also many new innovative ways for organizations to fundraise, like the continuous organization, using things like bonding curves that are used by like Uniswap protocols. Yeah, and lastly, I would like to personally thank and congratulate all of you. Our collective effort and awareness in improving user experience have significantly increased that monthly usage by about over 58% in the last 10 months. And this data is from State of the Dap. They've given us like custom data to help us communicate this. And yeah, I'd like to give like a short demo on how to integrate Fortmatic into your application. So visit fortmatic.com, hit get started. And now you'll be introduced to our dashboard. Basically, log in with GitHub. And you'll be given 2 API keys, one for testnet. You can pick between Rinkeby, Coven, Robston, and also the production API key. So I just get started to our documentation. Cool. So we have a Hello World tutorial here on CodePen. Cool. So the first step is include the Fortmatic SDK script. We also have NPM packages, but this is an easier way to demo. And then I'll set up my Fortmatic instance and set up my Web3 provider to be the Fortmatic provider. And lastly, you can use Web3.js functions as you're used to. If your app works with MetaMask, it would work with Fortmatic right away. So here, cool. And now I'll load up my API key. So I'm going to use my test API key. Cool. Now the app has restarted, and now I can log into Fortmatic. So I hit continue here. You can either use your phone number or email to sign up. So in this case, I will use my email. Cool. And then I'll log in with my password. Yeah, now I'm logged in, and I'm instructed to send out a Ethereum transaction. So for every developer who signed up on the Rinkeby network, we actually send them 1 free Rinkeby ETH, so you can get started right away. Cool, and then confirm transaction. Yeah, hope this works. Yeah, anyway, so we continuously pull the transaction to see if it's completed, so it can kind of help users and understand the process. And after it's completed, you can view this transaction on Etherscan or back to that. Also, I forgot to show that you will be able to select your fees. So you can actually select either faster or cheaper fees, or developer can suggest their own gas for this specific transaction. Also some cool explainer on what gas is. Slow. Yeah, there's a cool diagram here, supposedly. Yeah. Great. And so if you look at our documentation, we do support regular Ethereum transactions as well as general smart contract transactions. You can do personal sign type data, batch requests, ERC20 transfers, and we also work with Nifties as well. Yeah, great. Yeah, any questions? Yeah.
So I'm trying to understand what is the relationship between the username and password that you put Sean Lee at Fortmatic.com with the API key that you generated. Are you federating the usernames across all of these API keys, or like how is it like multi-tenant? Is it per API key you have per user?
That's a good question. So the service as is now is one email and password for all the apps. But each app have their own API keys which they can use. They can let users access with their Fortmatic account. But we are introducing a service where it's multi-tenant, that you can have different set of users or different set of apps who really want to have their own users and user experience.
And the connection between the ETH wallet and the username is one-to-one, is that right?
Yes.
So in the second case where you have the multi-tenant, there's going to be multiple wallets created per API key.
Yeah, and that will be possible with the headless solution.
Okay.
Yeah.
To what extent would it be problematic if apps shared API keys?
Yes, that's also a very good question. So we have a domain verification for dApps to kind of verify their domain, so they can actually use the production key. So without verification, it's only available for localhost.
Okay. Is that evaluated in the scripts or in your backend or both?
Yeah, it's validated in our backend, so you can actually do that on our dashboard. So we support like the meta tag way, file upload, or DNS record.
When would downloading the Fortmatic SDK with npm be like more beneficial than just a line for HTML, or they both do the same thing?
It's for developers who like want to lock down the version
Okay.
for their app, and yeah.
If we hosted a dApp using a content hash in the Ethereum name service, would we be able to use this service?
Jay, do the ENS question? How can you repeat the question?
So you support DNS, but can you support ENS?
Oh, we don't
Can
support
use
ENS.
content hashes? Okay.
Yeah, we don't support ENS yet.
Yeah.
But that's in our pipeline.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would it be helpful to have an API call where you can resolve ENS names, including origin names?
API call through RN?
Just an API call.
So that'd be useful.
Yeah, we can have that if that's urgently needed.
So I understand you have the HSM that does the signing, and you have a username and password that authenticates the user. Can you explain what happens in between?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's
if I lose my username and password, all that kind of thing.
yeah. So it's a interesting model where so the authentication is segregated from the key management, right? So basically, the key is generated on the client, right, in the browser, and the key gets sent directly to Amazon KMS. Yeah, through Amazon Cognito, which facilitates this this credential exchange, right? So Fortmatic doesn't like Fortmatic also. Yeah, so basically everything relies on Amazon's Cognito, and Fortmatic tries to stay out of the way as much as possible. And we do currently run an auth relayer that talks to Amazon and giving the tokens to the users. But like I mentioned before, we actually are locked out of the Amazon instance ourselves, so we cannot decrypt with it.
So if I'm following the private key generated client side, it's encrypted and sent to KMS, so
Yeah.
secret store, it's just, Amazon manages the
Yeah,
secret.
yeah. So it's like their own more developer-friendly key management service.
And you're locked out, you can't get it.
Right, right.
My username and password can get it.
Mhm.
And if I lose my username and password,
Yeah, you can initiate a recovery flow, which downloads an encrypted key from Fortmatic, right? So we store the encrypted version of the key in case you lose it. So now we can give it back to you, and you'll be able to recover, for example, through your email address.
through the email address.
Yeah.
How does that workflow work? So what actually does the decryption?
Yeah, so it's also the Cognito credential that does the decryption. So whenever the user authenticates, Amazon Cognito will send either a encryption scope credential or a decryption scope credential, which you can use to directly talk to the Amazon KMS for encryption or decryption. Yeah, and then we'll also have like more detailed diagrams illustrating these in the coming day or two. Yeah.
Can you walk through a scenario where you do not need a username and password, and the state, essentially you create a burner wallet on the browser, and then ultimately when I want to save my state, I create a Fortmatic account, because that is the best user experience. There's no username login. And a lot of popular Web 2 apps let you do that flow.
Right.
Optimizely, for example, you can play with the app without logging in. And then once you want to save your customizations, that's when you create a username account.
Yeah.
How would that work with Fortmatic?
I think that's perfectly possible. And I actually suggest this to Burner Wallet.
Okay.
Yeah, so if they integrate, and then they'll be able to commit with more permanence. But I think still we're exploring that option, and it's definitely more catered towards like crypto kind of projects, right? With quick wallets and but that's definitely a good suggestion for like getting started quickly and start exploring the space. But the challenge is, it's up to the dApps to inform their users to kind of create this permanence.
Can I jump on that?
Mhm.
So we're giving a UX price, and one specific one for $1,500. I would love to see anything in those lines implemented. So if any of you are looking for a project, I would love to see what you come up with.
No, because this is a genuine talk.
And no technical constraints, so use Fortmatic, use anything in that direction, I'm happy to.
When I see a brand new product on Product Hunt, I'm always
I'm sorry,
skeptical.
$10,000.
I'm always skeptical of sharing my username and password, because I know
Interesting.
at some point that's spammy. So I always go to throwawayemail.com, create a throwaway email, and then I sign up with the username and password. And if I like the system, then I go and recreate an account. And I'm shameless. I do that. But that's because I don't want it to tie into my identity and like
Try it
sell
before
my
you
stuff
buy
and all
it,
that
yeah.
stuff, right? But maybe that's because I'm just a little more cynical, maybe.
I think that's fair. I do that too.
Okay, so
A lot of people have a fake email attached to their Facebook or Twitter for the same reason.
Yeah.
Without being
Okay.
connected,
Exactly.
it's
okay,
just
so it's not
it's
just
kind of a burner.
okay.
Yeah. It's definitely not the majority, but I think there's a good chunk of us that would really love it. Great. Yeah.
You mentioned that you were looking at doing on-ramps.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so we're going to be, oh, it's not. Anyway, so we're working with MoonPay, our vendor. We were going to launch it today, but it's delayed by a week. So basically, it will be able to send a transaction just with the user's credit card, and then we will try to abstract as much away of the blockchain away as possible. So it's kind of a really slick Web 2 experience. Imagine that with like white labeling. So when users are interacting with your dApp, they have a white labeled credit card checkout experience. And we also negotiated a deal with MoonPay to lower the fees because all the dApps that are integrated with us will have MoonPay by default. So it's really beneficial for them. And also they will be adding Apple and Google Pay support for even easier checkout and also bank transfers for much lower fees. So we'll be integrating and looking to that as well.
Do you guys make money at the moment?
No, we don't. I would feel more comfortable making money if Web3 actually took off, where companies started to find their own business models. So far we're venture backed, so we don't worry about making money in the short term, and really want to help grow the ecosystem, and then work with the companies that's working with us on figuring out a pricing model that's fair. Great. Yeah. Thanks so much, guys. Sorry for the late start.